So we all know this is highly anticipated, but is it really Christopher Nolan's best film to date? Let's talk about that. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's movie review of The Odyssey, Christopher Nolan's adaptation of Homer's The Odyssey. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Nolan is once again back. He is now tackling one of the most famous stories in history of the Odyssey itself. That is a large task because of how complicated this story is. But if you don't know what the Odyssey is, it's basically about a character named Odysseus, who's played by Matt Damon in this movie, who has to atone for his sins, who has to try to get back home and try to find his wife, who's now under the basically every suitor who can imagine is trying to take over the throne of the kingship that Thalamachus, of course, who's played by Tom Holland, should have. And then you have a character played by, of course, Robert Pattinson, who's basically scheming and allowing these people to basically kind of corrupt the city of Ithaca. But it basically mostly follows Odysseus' character, who is basically atoning for the atrocities and war and basically hardships that he puts on his people after the 10-year war of the Battle of Troy. And so it follows Odysseus' story, it follows Telemachus' story, it follows, Penelope's story, and every character you can imagine, everything that you can imagine that this story would be, whether it be Circe or whether it be Calypso or whether it be Poseidon or Zeus or anything of that nature. It basically is that, the Cyclops and stuff like that. So it is the Odyssey in a nutshell. If it's basically Odysseus' story in a lot of respects. And of course, this is Christopher Nolan, so it's filmed in IMAX, it's 70 millimeter, blah, 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 blah. So that, if you know anything, at least a little bit about the Odyssey and what it took for Odysseus to try to get home, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into. So there you go. So it's no surprise that this movie is going to make a lot of money its first weekend. Christopher Nolan has become the premier director in Hollywood. He is the most anticipated director when it comes to his movies. He shoots everything really stylish with Hoytema. Of course, he's shooting this movie entirely in 70 millimeter IMAX. He's basically brought back something that's been missing, which is true artisanal filmmaking. And what I mean by that is somebody that you go to see that is attempting to, like Martin Scorsese or Steven Spielberg, attempting to do something unique and interesting and be creative in the world of filmmaking. You see like Steven Soderbergh and stuff like that doing that. But this is, a movie that had tickets go on sale for the first showing of the 70 millimeter IMAX a year in advance and sell at every showing. That's how anticipated Christopher Nolan has become. It makes sense. Oppenheimer almost made $1 billion. It's Christopher Nolan. He's made the Dark Knight trilogy. He's made Memento. He's made everything you can imagine across the sea. But though I got to see this in 70 millimeter, it wasn't IMAX, so it was a much smaller version, but it was filmed. So you got to see the film version. And that leads into what I think of this movie. It is no surprise that this movie is great. This movie is like one of the best of the years. What really surprised me is that this might be Christopher Nolan's best movie of all time. That's hard to say with The Dark Knight and Memento, but this movie's scale, its epicness, its drive, its use of source material in such interesting fashion is unparalleled, to be fairly honest. I don't think I've ever been this awed by a movie in quite a while. I always say I'm awed by the crazy horror film like an Evil Dead Burn or something like that. But this movie is doing something on a scale, and yes, it has like a $250 million budget, that is just a sight to behold. I want to see this movie in 70 millimeter IMAX. I'm going to see this in dual laser IMAX, which will still show it in 140. But watching this in 70 millimeter reminds me of what it's like to watch a true artist work and to give us a really true, authentic experience that you don't get a lot of times. We get a million different movies, but this movie just is working on so many different above levels of anything you'll ever see that it's quite just impressive. The sets are impressive. A lot of this, I'm sure there's some CGI in here because they probably did some of the background work. But the Cyclops, which is it's an amazing scene, is a puppet or a character. I can't remember if it was like Bill Irwin did the character. It's a movie that its strengths lie in its subtleties of what it's trying to say and what it's trying to do. It's a movie with the set pieces are just some of the most brilliant things you'll see in cinema this year or last 10 years. It's a movie that is so epic and so beautiful to watch and so heartbreaking and sad and so just kind of over the strain. It's it almost stretches a credulity just how Christopher Nolan keeps doing this. Like it just shows that somebody with enough passion and drive can create some of the most beautiful art you'll ever see. But also when it comes to the cast, it's, you know, the top talent working today, whether it be Tom Holland, Zendaya, Robert Pattinson, Hemish Patel, you know, Matt Damon, Anne Hathaway, Bill Irwin, Elliot Page. It's all the people you expect from, you know, Christopher Nolan, but, you know, of course, have John Leguizamo, who's giving a fantastic performance. Everyone's giving a fantastic performance. I just wish the script was a little bit better when it came to the dialogue. But yeah, I mean, watching Tom Holland just kind of have to go search for his father and be kind of put down upon a bunch of these suitors, and watching Matt Damon and, you know, Charlize Theron work together and watching it kind of play back, you know, his memory. It's a sight to behold, to be fairly honest. It really is. So yeah, I can't believe how much I love this movie. I can't believe how much this movie just moved me, and how much, you know, it's 3 hours long and I never felt the 3 hours. And, you know, watching the giant soldier scene, and watching the Cyclops scene, and watching, you know, the scene with Cersei, and watching the scenes with, you know, Telemachus and Penelope, and I think it's Antonius, that is the Robert Pattinson character. But then you have the Land of the Dead stuff with Sinan, and you have like how much Odysseus is just trying to get home, but he's trying to atone for his sins, and how do you handle that? And then on top of that, you have Athena, who's played by Zendaya, who kind of constantly follows him like a spurned spirit, and it becomes this movie that just kind of envelops you and kind of just creates a sense of wonder. And, you know, Hoytma's cinematography is fantastic, and Ludwig Göransson's score just once again proves that he's just like the most talented composer that creates really interesting themes. And just watching these characters have to guide themselves through a very difficult shoot, I'm sure, and watching the crew just have to take this gigantic IMAX camera, and they have to put in this thing called the blimp so that it doesn't create a lot of sound, and watching just people have to work off one another who can't see each other, so they create a mirror system. Christopher Nolan is just one of the craziest, most beautiful working directors I've ever seen. I don't think anybody has been this talented since Steven Spielberg, and has created this many great films since Steven Spielberg. And this is such a profound work. It's a brutal, violent work, but it's a profound, moving, like psychological, heartbreaking, but also just a film that just knows its material and does it with such love. And it's such a beautiful movie. The only thing that I have a small nitpick with is some of the dialogue is just really cringy, but that's kind of how Christopher Nolan rolls. You're more into it for the action and the kind of story driven aspects of it. And, you know, there's some stuff in there that probably, you know, had to be cut. Like the siren stuff is not as prevalent. He definitely stays away a lot from the fantastical stuff. And it's a movie that takes the best parts of filmmaking and does it with wonders. And I'm really excited to see this in true IMAX. I really am, because I think it's going to be a sight to behold. But it's really difficult not to say this is going to be one of the best films of the year for me. Where it's in my, you know, where it's in my top 10, I don't entirely know, because the year's not over. Right now, this is number one on my list of like my favorite films of the year so far. So it's going to be interesting to see. This is a high recommend for any person that is wondering if this movie's any good. Listen to the hype. I'm sure there's some people that are not going to like it because it is what it is. But for a film that is 3 hours, is a Greek mythology story, like Oppenheimer, somehow Christopher Nolan made it entertaining. I don't know how he did it, but he made it entertaining. But once again, it is very violent, it is very graphic, but it is a wonder and sight to behold, and some of the greatest set pieces you'll ever see. So that's my take on the Odyssey, which is now finally in theaters. So all you people that waited a year, you finally get to see this movie on opening night. So there you go. So anyways, in the comments below, I'm sure you're excited to see it, but what's your favorite Christopher Nolan film? So there you go. Anyways, with that said, thank you so much for watching. If you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.